Hi guys, welcome to another Time Traveling Kids Story Time with Jefferson Patterson Park Museum. It's Miss Liz here with you again this month, and I am super excited for this month because we are going to be talking about fall. Fall is my favorite season. I love seeing the trees change color, I love the cooler weather, and in fall, my favorite food comes in season. Can you guess what it might be? It's apples. I absolutely love apples. I love just eating apples plain or maybe with some peanut butter. And I also love all of the delicious things you can bake with apples. I love apple pie, apple dumplings, apple cake, caramel apples. I am just crazy about apples. And so I decided that this month it would be great to learn about a man who is responsible for planting a lot of the apple trees and apple orchards in America. His name was Johnny Appleseed, and he lived a long time ago when America was a brand new country. And he traveled across the country planting apple orchards. So we're going to read this book by Reeve Lindbergh with art by Kathy Jacobson.
Johnny Appleseed, poem by Reeve Lindbergh, paintings by Kathy Jacobson. In the early days of the American frontier, when most of this nation was still wild, unsettled land, there lived a man of great courage and gentleness who traveled through the wilderness, planting apple trees. His name was John Chapman, though he came to be known to generations of Americans as Johnny Appleseed. This is one story about his gift to our country. These apple trees were planted here a century ago, 100 years of springtime bloom, 100 years of snow. 100 apple autumns with the wild geese flying by, 100 years of applesauce and steaming apple pie. The man who planted apple trees once stood here on this land, a sack of seeds upon his back, a Bible in his hand. Young Hannah Goodwin saw him first, a stranger, lean and lorn. His face was thin, his feet were bare, his clothing old and worn. The Goodwin family asked him in to dine and talk a while. America was lonely then, he'd traveled many a mile. He said he'd gladly stay to sup, but could not linger here. He had to go plant apple trees across the great frontier. He said it was a wide, wild land, a lonesome land and long. He said his apples, sharp and sweet, would make the country strong. The family listened while he spoke of forests green and grand, of prairies vast with waving grass, of rivers ribbed in sand. He spoke of families like their own, all moving bravely west, with guns and tots and cooking pots to claim the wilderness. He said he'd bring them apple trees, our Lord's gift to the earth. He said the sun would warm his seeds, the rain would give them birth. He said that each good orchard grown would bear fruit as God planned, and give the yearning pioneers a taste of promised land. The Goodwin family wished him well and watched him leave alone. He carried neither gun nor knife, nor weapon did he own. For though he walked alone and lorn through dangerous land and wild, he said he'd harm no creature born, each one was God's own child. Young Hannah heard the tales of him all through her growing years, as he brought apples sharp and sweet to other pioneers. She heard he walked through day and night, and through the winds that moan. She heard he walked in snow and rain that chilled him to the bone. And where he walked she heard he gave his blessing softly thrown, the scattered seeds among the weeds, the sweet fruit wisely grown. She heard he loved the forest land and all its creatures too, wild deer and hare, wild wolf and bear, and every bird that flew. She heard the Indians trusted him, he knew the things they knew, which plants would heal or make a meal, which streams ran clear and true. He walked all trails and heard all tales, his orchards spread and grew, and where he went the deep rich scent of apple blossoms blew. Old Hannah Goodwin saw him last, when many years had gone. He came in by the orchard gate, a quiet hour passed on. Old Hannah knew that gentle smile, that face long and thin. There was a Bible in his hand, he spoke of where he'd been. He'd walked all through America, and all his seeds he'd sown. He'd planted apples sharp and sweet, and swiftly they had grown. There was spicy apple cider now out on the western plain. There was applesauce in Iowa, and apple pie in Maine. Apples crossed the wide Missouri and down the Ohio. Sharp and sweet across the land, they made our country grow. Old Hannah Goodwin offered thanks for her own trees grown so tall. He said no thanks were owed to him, the Lord had made them all. To grow a country or a tree takes just a planter who will seed and tend till in the end the earth's best dream comes true. He said farewell and traveled on, and did not come again, but in this orchard sharp and sweet his apples still remain. Old Hannah Goodwin talked of him in apple time each year, when the orchard came to harvest and the air was crisp and clear. She'd ask children to remember and to thank the Lord indeed for apple sharp and apple sweet and Johnny Appleseed. The end.
Alright guys, now I'm going to show you how to make a really fun and tasty apple-themed craft. So, first preparation, you're definitely going to need some help from a grown-up with. You need to get an apple, you need to slice it, and then you're going to dry those apple slices in the oven. So for those grown-ups, you're going to slice it about 1/4 inch thick, and you're going to lay them out on a baking sheet. Put your oven at the lowest temperature it'll go to, and then you just need to let them bake in the oven at that low temperature for a couple of hours. Depending on your oven temperature, depending on how dry it is where you're living, it's going to vary how long it takes, but until they get dry. Then take them out of the oven, let them cool, and you're ready for your craft. Now, we are going to be making apple necklaces. So for your necklace, you need some kind of string. Whatever you have works. Yarn works. I have a little bit of embroidery thread here. Any kind of string will do though. Find one end of your string, and there's 2 ways to do this. If you have one of these plastic needles, that works really well, but if you don't have one of those, that's fine. You can just use a toothpick, and you can tie the end of the string around your toothpick. I'm going to go ahead and use my needle. I'm going to thread it through. Then I'm going to pick up my first apple slice, and I'm going to push it through and thread it onto the necklace. Now, you can add things to your necklace, whatever you want to add. I have some beads here. You could do buttons. You could also take plastic straws and cut them up into pieces and put that on for your necklace. So go ahead, using whatever you have and whatever you want, string up your necklace. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to string mine up. All right, now that I have my necklace and my beads strung, I'm gonna kind of push those out. I'm gonna even up the ends of my strings and tie it off into a necklace. I can now wear it. And if I get hungry a little later, I can snack on it. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next month.